If we want to, I have Pat's up now on the screen.
Yeah, mine it's not real good, but it's all right. The one thing I did not see, Tom, and I apologize for this, I never saw a description of authentic assessment box.
You didn't
I
see
guess
that
it's too many
because I just
tables.
added that today.
Oh, you didn't. Well, you know what's funny though? I did check the document. Oh, the links. It was the links I checked. Okay, because I thought, oh, I missed that. But then I did scroll down. Andrea missed it too.
I
Na na
missed
na na
it.
na na. Yeah, na 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 na.
That's
Hey,
that's
at
But
one
least you
thing
have
I
about
think,
something to look at.
yeah,
it's
I
one
I
thing
do think that's good.
that's one thing about being a co-learner. That means I can, recreate the assignments whenever I
Add
need to.
things at a
And
moment's
Exactly.
notice.
and Chris is just smiling. She's saying, "I'm so glad I waited."
Yes,
Oh,
right. There you go, Chris.
yes. Score one for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could look at Pat. We could kind of work through yours together, and maybe
Sure, that's
maybe do
pretty
we want
quick.
to try to co-create what that authentic assessment might look like based on your curricular aim and the tasks and stuff like that? We can all get into the document. So, I think what I like to do every time we meet online is kind of let everybody in the room, excluding me, kind of go at it and say, okay, you are a team. And let's say you're all together. You're going to have to teach this curricular aim that Pat has. That you've. Let's assume you've all created it. So, how might you describe that ultimate authentic assessment given the context and the tasks? How might you write that out?
Um,
Pat, do you want to walk us through the curricular aim? You want to just talk
Hmm.
us through it?
yeah, okay. This was overall, it was identifying major characteristics of ancient cultures. So, and this was something we had actually done. Students will choose one of the ancient dynasties of China, research and create a replica of an artifact representing their dynasty using art materials of their choosing. They also contributed to a wiki and did a lot more, so there was a lot more involved, but this was just one piece of it. And I picked it because it really was creation. So the context, and I see now probably it could be, and it was done together with the art teacher. So, you know, it could be in our art studio, you'll create a replica of an artifact representative of an ancient Chinese dynasty. And for the authentic task, it was social studies, art, and technology. The knowledge that they used was their research about ancient Chinese dynasties. What product was created, a replica of an artifact representing an ancient Chinese dynasty? What resources? And it was art materials, whatever they wanted to do. Some of them made clay pots, some of them made kites. So there was a lot of different things. And the timeline was 3 to 5 days.
One context that comes to mind would be museums do this all the time when they
Hmm.
put together exhibits.
Good
So
one.
that,
Okay, that
Yep.
and
that would be wonderful.
yeah,
Preparing for an exhibit at,
A curator. You're a
Yeah.
yeah.
Good
museum
one.
curator.
museum
Hmm.
curator.
Can we add that in?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it, Pat. I see your cursor. Go for it.
Um, we'll create. You could even say, I mean, you will create and prepare for display. Let's
Hmm.
throw that in there because that's what they would do too.
On the wiki, did they kind
Okay.
of write up a description of the artifact?
They didn't do that. They really just wrote more about the dynasty with the
Okay,
philosophy and education, the emperors and things like that. It was more pictures. They
sure.
uh, they
Provided some
posted
background,
pictures.
it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that really was nice.
So
Um,
I'm looking at your authentic task, and I see what knowledge is used, and it says student research. Do you know more, Pat? Like what specifically? Like did they have to? I'm trying to think of some of the Bloom's verbs. Were they understanding something? Were they analyzing
Analyzing.
something? I mean, do you
yeah, I
remember?
would say, um, I'd
Probably
say,
evaluate, wouldn't they? Need to
Were they
evaluate in
evaluating?
order to decide what they're going to replicate?
um, well, they would first have to know what the artifacts. were.
So maybe identify first.
Yeah.
And that would probably be in the learning progression, I would imagine. You know, those steps that would take you to being able to do
Right.
the. Because when I look at the curricular aim, the curricular aim almost looks like more of a description of kind of the end product, you know, or kind of like the task they're going to do at the end. And so that's my question is like, okay, so what knowledge or skill is being called out? Like, what is the standard they're being assessed on? What are they supposed to master as a result
Right.
of doing
Well,
this,
the actual
work?
standard that I used, which this was a private school, so they're a little different. I didn't go deeper. The actual standard was just generally identify major characteristics of ancient cultures.
Okay, so okay.
So,
So probably where
we could say
knowledge used, maybe it's in a recognition of, because if they're identifying, they're probably just recognizing, I'm guessing.
okay.
So I'm looking at the wording in both Tom and Andrea's curricular aim, which is from the learning progression. The if the student can ... they have
Right.
mastered the learning
I
objective.
saw that. Right.
Could it be reworded that way? So if the student can identify and replicate, well, if the student can
Yeah.
identify
Here, I can type that.
major
Yeah.
characteristics.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right. If the student can do the replication,
Yeah, I saw that different
Major
wording.
characteristics of ancient
before.
cultures.
yeah. It wouldn't be a replica if it didn't have those characteristics in it.
Right.
So identify and replicate an artifact that demonstrates major characteristics, or how do we want to word
Yeah,
that?
I think that would be good. I think that was good, and the reason I said replicate too, because I hated to keep saying
How about-
replicate an artifact, but that's what you got to do.
How
What do
about
you
if the
think?
student can identify and replicate a major characteristic, or I'm thinking
major.
in an
Just
artifact.
leave it general.
So
yeah.
can they identify and replicate a major characteristic in an artifact? Characteristic of an ancient culture in an artifact.
Yeah, and then we could get rid of the
Does that
if
make sense?
there. We could just say the student. Yeah, if we got rid of the if, it would just
Thank
be the
you.
student
Thank you,
can
Andrea.
identify and replicate,
Great.
like an I can.
Well, I was just
statement.
thinking, yeah, because the language for the others are that they have mastered the
Yeah.
learning objective.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, we could add that at the end. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I hear what you're saying. So we could keep the if in there.
Okay.
And I'll write at the end to demonstrate mastery or something.
Right.
yep, there we go.
Okay. Does that make sense, Pat? How we kind
Yes,
of
it does. Yes, it does. And I could see that, and I thought, oh, that's why I was going to say jump to Andrea's, because
No
hers
way.
is
You're
much
not-
more detailed.
You're not
and,
off the hook, Pat.
You
You're
know,
not off
not
the
to
hook.
be off the hook, but to save, to either save time, or this will be a good learning experience then too. So, and
I'm
and
learning
this really is
lots.
worthwhile, so.
I'm learning lots.
Yeah,
I know.
well, me too, Chris. Just from viewing the examples,
But
you do learn a lot like that.
Really, what we're doing is we're giving Chris more reason to procrastinate.
Next time I'm gonna
No, it'll be done once we're done with this.
Oh, I know. I'm only kidding.
No, I know.
share
Yeah.
yours, Chris, because then we'll want to see it. It'll be the best
Okay.
one.
Yes,
no, I don't
definitely.
think so.
So okay, so great. We now know what it is. Where they have to identify and
So we
replicate,
just-
and they're doing it like a museum curator.
Right.
So and we know the knowledge is at recognition, identify. And they're going to create the replica. And so and resources, internet access, art materials. Okay, do we think we have everything we need to do that statement? Or do you guys think we need more?
What knowledge is what knowledge is
Okay.
used? Should that be students recognize and identify major characteristics?
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
Because they're
Okay.
not recognizing and identifying an artifact. So that should just be instead of an artifact. Yep. Students recognize and identify major characteristics of ancient Chinese dynasties. And I want to throw ancient Chinese secrets in there, but that's a Calgon commercial.
Yeah, we're kind of dating ourselves on that one.
Sorry.
Good parallel structure.
Yeah.
Right
I
when
like
you
it.
said that, I was about to jump in. I said, no, that'd be culturally insensitive. So I left that up to Chris.
It would be. Sorry.
Students recognize and identify a major characteristic of an ancient Chinese dynasty.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we can get rid of everything else.
Well, no, you want to
Okay.
keep the...
Okay, now what's the performance? That's next thing. Product.
What product or performance is created?
Okay, what? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And this is a product they're creating.
Yep.
What product is created? And let's bold that. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I thought one thing Chappius and Artir brought up about assessment was the idea of making sure every student has access to the same resources.
Right.
And I know sometimes I don't know how many times I've had students do projects and they did an iMovie at home,
Mm-hmm.
and then there were other students in class that had to struggle through some other technology like
Poster.
Windows Playmaker.
Yeah, knowing
Or a poster.
that is really important. Now,
Yeah,
we
and
were
I
lucky.
thought-
Where I am, they have 2 computer labs, and the kids have everything. The older grades are bringing their own devices to school, so that wasn't an issue. But
Yeah.
the other thing is, too, that when you give students choice in what they're going to create, you really have to make sure that some of the same skills are used for when you go to evaluate their creations. That was another issue that I thought was interesting. You have
Yeah.
to make sure that the skills are relatively the same in whatever's being produced if they have choice.
Sure. So
I
kind of make
thought
sure.
that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you kind
Yeah.
of make sure that you lay out the objectives really clearly so that it's really the same skill across the board no matter what
Right.
product it is. That's a good point.
And usually, if it was digital tools, we would kind of specify the digital tools. But with this, it was really just what they wanted to create. So I guess we have to do the description of authentic assessment. And I'm looking at, okay, I guess we could say basically,
So it kind of takes that.
yeah, the students will choose one of the ancient dynasties of China, research and create a replica. That whole sentence, would that be the description?
Yeah,
Or-
I know what Stiggins did in his examples. He started with the resources. I think he said, given these things, and his example was given a stopwatch,
Okay.
and then they had to do their science
So-
thing.
Okay, so using
art materials.
various art materials.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's asking me to. It comes up. Sometimes I can't edit it, and then it says you just have to refresh the page.
No
Now
problem.
I'm using Firefox, but
I can get in there. So go ahead and tell me, using
various art materials.
okay.
Using various art materials, students will research and create one replica of an artifact representative of an ancient Chinese dynasty. Now, I guess the only thing that we don't have up there too was, I guess that's good enough. The only thing that comes to mind is that maybe we would have had some kind of display of these artifacts. They would have been like what you were saying, Andrea. with a little background information, maybe, you know, like tagging them, Chris, as a curator does. You label them, you know, and maybe, you know, I can always go back and put this in, but maybe part of the other thing they would have had to do, they would have had to label their artifact with a brief description.
Sure.
And then
yeah,
these
that'd be
would have
cool.
displayed somewhere else, you know.
You know what'd be
that
cool?
would be nice.
Here's cool. A QR code to the wiki.
Oh, yes.
Love it.
Definitely.
Love it.
QR code to the wiki.
Yeah, definitely.
Love it.
Okay. Put that in there. And that
I've
would
seen
be
that
cool.
at the zoo.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they have done that in the hallways. They're pretty techy. They have put those in the hallways for similar things like that, the QR codes throughout the hallways that the kids could do. So
Now
that's
it's
really good. Now it's together.
One thing that's interesting, Pat, and I think Andrea, we had this discussion today. If you look at your resources, there's internet access is not a resource. And so my question would be, okay, so is internet access really part of what I was trying to teach? If I'm trying to get them to identify and replicate a major characteristic, I'm thinking it's good that it's left out, because I don't think it has anything to do with demonstrating that I can identify and replicate. Maybe that was something that occurred in the learning progression. Maybe that was part of maybe that was a building block to be able to replicate and identify, was the research part. So I think what's kind of nice about these descriptions is you're leaving out maybe what's not really essential. So you don't have a big laundry list of you have to do X, Y, Z, ABC, when really, no, you just have to do this one thing. You have to identify and replicate a major characteristic. That's it.